a lot of people in the room and a lot of people to speak, so if we would all respect those who are going to speak here and quiet down, that'd be appreciated. So, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Well, this was about as bizarre as anything gets. As a member of the government, a public servant, and as a governor. We knew we had a problem early on, and we started looking at it, and then of course we had the unbelievable events in Zanesville. And we had the law enforcement people who helped to bring some security to that area in before the cabinet, because it was a harrowing time. Imagine being trained to be a police officer, and the next thing you know, you're being charged by lions and grizzly bears, and just really hard to believe. Ohio really was the Wild Wild West. I mean, we had virtually no rules and no regulations in terms of all this. After Zanesville, I had an opportunity to travel around the state, and made it a purpose to ask a lot of our county sheriffs, is this a problem? And you would not believe how many county sheriffs told me, oh yeah, just down the street there's a guy down there that's got a grizzly bear, or there's a guy down there that has a lion, or a guy down there that has a tiger. This was not something that just was located over in Muskingum County. The other thing that became clear to me was somebody's going to get killed. I mean, it's just a matter of time until one of these animals got out. We know that over in Zanesville there were so many of these exotic animals, of which there were few in number, that were killed that morning. But what I'm always more concerned about is what the heck is the risk to the public. And if you think about the Zanesville incident, if any of those animals made it across that highway, and had they found their way into a schoolyard or God knows what, you see these sweet little Kansas girls, you know, one of them, I don't mean them, but somebody just like them could have been at risk. So we had to get moving on this, and it took many, many months and an awful lot of hours, because when you're changing the culture of a state, to bring about some rules and some regulations, it's not something that happens easily. On my staff, Jimmy Shepard, countless hours, Craig Butler, Ben Kanzig, Kim Kuchbaugh, Janelle Mead, Dr. Forshee, and of course Jay Shabria. And in the early hours after the Zanesville tragedy, in an effort to try to figure out, could we get a handle on something, they scoured the books to find out what kind of laws we had in Ohio to prevent this from happening. And we found out there were some things that were connected, as I recall, to the Humane Society, to the county sheriffs, but limited in nature, which clearly meant we needed to do more. I know this bill at times became emotional with those people who possess these animals. I mean, you know, they're committed to them, and they hung on pretty tightly. And I think we've crafted legislation that's reasonable, but that's very tough, that's going to bring greater security. I don't want anybody to think that this is all solved and there could not be another problem. But the people of Ohio need to know that the legislature has acted, that we now have put in place a series of laws that I believe are going to provide, in a common sense, reasonable way, security for Ohioans. And that's what's really important here, and the fact that there'll be proper treatment of these animals. Now, Dave Daniels put an enormous amount of time in this as the Director of the Department of Agriculture. A lot of the responsibility now is going to fall upon him to make sure that we have proper inspection as we grandfather from one generation of animals to another. I am thrilled that Dave is in this position. He will be the one that will work with our staff to figure out what the When somebody wants to give up an animal because they can't reach the specifications, it's going to be up to him working with all of us to figure out where we will place those animals. I don't see Jim Zeringer here anywhere. Jim Zeringer is here, and Jim over at DNR, he's been fantastic. I mean, total and complete teamwork. And then this guy here, Troy Balderson, is pretty ironic, but he got an enormous amount of heat from people who own these animals. They're small in number, but they're loud and aggressive and emotional. And you know, I don't really want to criticize them. They just feel very strongly that these are mine and nobody's going to take them from me. Troy, just not long ago, was a car dealer, okay? And I liked him the moment I met him. I spent some time with him, and he went in the House, and before you knew it, he was in the Senate. And he did a fantastic job. And you should be very proud of what you've done, because you know, it would have been easy to look the other way or not come up with a good solution. The same with Brian Hill. I mean, Brian hated the fact that we had to do this. But somehow he figured out that this was the thing to do, and it was the right thing to do, to make sure that, you know, the animals are safe, but most important, the public is safe. You know, I just think it's just really, really, really critical. Cliff over here, I mean, is the Senate chairman. Cliff Hite did a great job in making sure this got through his committee. Dave Hall is not here today. Well, Dave, come on up here. Dave Hall, they left you off the list. No, I'm just kidding. They did, but Dave Hall had this bill come to his committee, and this was not easy for him, because he had folks in that committee that just didn't want to do this. And my understanding is, in fact, I called him a couple days after. Dave said, "Look, this is a tragedy waiting to happen," and he worked across party lines, and he got the Democrats on board. And you know, it's a bipartisan bill, and Dave showed terrific leadership. So this is a case, you know, and people look at it and they go, "Well, why isn't this just a slam dunk?" Well, it's just so simple, just do it. But I have to tell you, with all the questions, it's so complicated. Where do you put the animals? What animals do we take? What do we do about venomous snakes? What do we do about this? We don't have enough places to put these animals. Who's going to take them? What is the proper right in terms of somebody, you know, transitioning to where this generation of animals gone and they don't get another one? And what should the regulations look like? You just wouldn't believe the amount of time. And it was frustrating to me because there's so many issues, and I just thought, boy, let's just get this done. It just took more time than you would think. But we now have changed Ohio, and there are a lot of other states out there, I believe, that are going to learn from what we've done in our state. I think in many ways, this will be a model piece of legislation for the way to get this done. And while we stood out on the front page of the newspaper for having this tragedy here, I think we're going to be on the front page of newspapers with people saying, maybe we should see, how did Ohio do it? How did they get this done? What did they do? What's the reasonableness of it? And so I think it can serve as a real model to the rest of America about how to do this in a reasonable way. On the scene that morning, of course, was Jungle Jack. And Jack said that, as only Jack could say, it seemed like Noah's Ark had crashed that morning. And I've known Jack for a long, long time. I don't think I've ever seen Jack so emotional. The only other time I saw Jack so, well, I mean, there've been a lot, he's seen a lot of really terrible things. But this one was one of those things that really gripped him, because he has such a love for the animals, but he also knew that we needed to make some reasonable changes. Now, I also have to tell you, there's some people that say, well, the zoos, you know, are this or that. You know, well, that's why we have zoos, so people can go and look at these animals safely. There's also opportunity for people to put these in sanctuaries, to rescue these animals that have been abused. I mean, there are ways to get this done that's in this legislation. But I think at the end of the day, I'm proud of my colleagues. It took some guts. And I got to tell you, Troy, This is the first step in a long step of growing as a legislator and becoming a leader. And Dave Hall the same way. Cliff, Cliff's just steady hand. We got to get something done. We're going to get it done. Same way with Dave, steady on the tiller. And I think we should be proud of what's happened today. Who I recognize first